You see, something is going to happen. Something wonderful.
My God, it's full of stars.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the NY Patriot Show. And today I'm very lucky to have Donald Jeffries on with me. If you don't know who he is, you should. He has, you said you have, I know you have a bunch of books. You got like 6 of them here, I think you said? 6? Mm-hmm. Okay. He's got 6 books: Hidden History, Crimes and Cover-Ups, Survival of the Richest, On Borrowed Fame, a bunch of books. All those links are in the bottom. And I guess really the best thing for me to do is to let you probably really introduce yourself. If you can, just in case there's people listening to my show who don't know who you are, would you like to let them all know what you're about, what you do, your books and all that?
Well, thanks for having me. I got started a long time ago as a teenager, researching the JFK assassination with Mark Lane. Mark Lane was the most famous critic of the Warren Report. I was a volunteer for his group, Citizens Committee of Inquiry. So this has been a part of my life, since even before I was an adult. And I started going down the rabbit holes. Was again very involved in all that, and eventually I just started extending out beyond that. First RFK and MLK, and then eventually, especially when Bill Clinton became president, with Oklahoma City and Waco, and all the various Vince Foster and all those kind of crimes. So that's what basically my first fun fiction book was about. Hidden History. It was about all those things, and I just came to believe, as I do now, I just think we're being run by absolutely corrupt, evil forces, and I don't hold back at all. I don't I don't sugarcoat it at all. It is what it is, and it's people tell me, you think everything's a conspiracy. Well, yes, I do, because we're being run by conspirators, and this is how they do business. So I don't back off from any of it. So I'm pretty extreme. A lot of people like it, but maybe some people think I'm too extreme. But hey, it is what it is.
Very good. Oh, sorry, I muted myself. And that was one of the things, talking about all that stuff is what really had interested me in having you on, is because I do know you have gone into a lot of basically crimes and cover-ups kind of done within the government and in the, I guess just people with government positions, and I do find, the JFK thing itself, that's just so much in itself, but I did find. And really one of the books that I was really kind of impressed that I wanted to maybe talk about was really the crimes and cover-ups in American politics. Mm-hmm. Obviously I'm not going to have you read the book off, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Or go too much into it because you want people to buy the book as well. But I just wanted to know if there was anything you don't mind maybe delving into that you covered in that book, or specific
anything, I don't mind talking about anything.
You don't want to read the whole book off, then nobody's going to buy it, you know what I'm saying?
No, but that book is it's basically a prequel to Hidden History, because people, when Hidden History came out, it was basically the JFK assassination up to the Obama years, because that's when it was before Trump. I don't think Trump's name even appears in it, amazingly enough, because it was published in 2014. So people reminded me that, hey, it didn't start with the JFK assassination, and it didn't. So I went back and covered extensively a lot of the earlier things, starting with the American Revolution. There's only so far you can go back. As I said, I can go back to the burning of the library in Alexandria or something. There were conspiracies back then, but I was just, for our purposes, I wanted to cover, and I can't focus that much on the world either. So I prefer, because there's enough here to talk about. So I talk about American history. So I start with the founding of the Republic, and probably the most unique thing about the book, first of all, it has a foreword by Ron Paul, which amazed me that he was, he was willing to do that. So that was very cool, because he's a hero of mine. And probably the most unique, controversial thing about it is my take on Abraham Lincoln. I cover him in great detail there, and I have a different view than most people. I think he was a tyrant, and I think that he is responsible for a lot of the bad things. He set a lot of awful precedents that we see even today, and you can even look at something like the January 6th prisoners. the political prisoners. And that precedent was set under Abraham Lincoln when he locked up, we don't even know how many thousands of Northern citizens he locked up without trials. He suspended the writ of habeas corpus for no reason at all. They objected to his policies. And that's what's going on now. So if we still had civil libertarians left, I'm a civil libertarian. There aren't many of us left. No. You would have people outside those jails, protesting the people being denied all due process. It's terrible what's happening. But even if they did, the courts would cite the precedent of Lincoln and said, hey, Lincoln did this before, and that would be all there was to it because there's not enough of us to fight it. But so that's what the book is about. It should be called Hidden History 2, which I wanted to be called, but the publisher didn't like that title. So in fact, I have Hidden History 3 is with the publisher now. So hopefully they'll keep that because it's really a series of books. And I even have Hidden History 4 that I'm starting to work on as well.
Oh, wow. Damn. So you write a lot, huh?
I do write a lot.
I was going to say, I'm assuming you must like it, but I mean, I've spoken to a lot of people that do write books and, guests that I've had on, and they seem to think it's like very therapeutic in a sense. It
is. And it's something, I enjoy it. It's a labor of love usually because I only write about things that interest me. If I had to do it for a living, like I don't know, write, scientific reviews or something, I wouldn't, it would be work, but all this stuff are things that interest me. So it's a labor of love.
That's great, man. That's really good. That's really good. When it comes, you had mentioned something, I guess pretty much just like locking people up with like any due process and stuff. I mean, not that I want to get on something that's like too relatively new, but I mean, do you think that's even going on with like that January 6th thing?
Yeah, I mean,
even though who knows what really happened there?
No, well, we don't know. There's 14,000 hours of video that still remain unavailable, and I've had several of those people on my show. I had Ashley Babbitt's, who was killed by a cop. I had her mother on my show, so I've had lots of these people on, and there's one woman that's facing a 30-year prison sentence, and she was just beaten by cops viciously. She tried to stop people from breaking windows. So I mean, that's the reality. A lot of them have already been sentenced to draconian sentences, but there's a bunch of them that are still sitting in jail and again, I just go back to nothing happens without precedent. And that's why it's important for us to know our history because somebody like Lincoln set a lot of this into play with his, basically violating the Constitution. And later presidents like Woodrow Wilson would do it during World War I. And FDR definitely during World War II, and even up to George W. Bush with the Guantanamo Bay stuff and the torture. Again, all that went back. He had people that cited Lincoln as president. If they didn't cite Lincoln, they cited Roosevelt or something. So that's the problems when people don't protest it at the time, then it gets set and they say, well, and especially now that Lincoln is considered the secular saint of our civilization, anything he did, well, Lincoln did it. It's like, okay, well, I guess, let me show you his real record. So that's why I think it's important. The book, a lot of people, if they're not familiar with the other side of Lincoln, they will be shocked at the things that happened under him because they're just used to this, image that is completely, it's as false as anything else. That's why I don't believe anything that comes out of the media. I call these people the court historians. And much as we were familiar, if you're looking at the media today, that they're basically state-controlled media. There's no investigative journalism outside of people like us on the internet or alternative books like mine. There's not a lot, but that's the way it's been for quite a long time. That's why I am unique in that I'm writing history. That's why I call it hidden history, that it counters what the court historians say. And you can see the court historians on television. They have the platforms I don't have. But I'm trying to do what the first revisionist historian, Harry Elmer Barnes, who was a great man, he's the one who coined the term court historians, but he said he was attempting to bring history into accord with the facts. That's what I'm trying to do.
You mentioned Lincoln a whole lot, and that was actually something I did want to maybe go back to. And this is just stuff that I've seen recently. I will have to admit, especially lately, I've stayed out of politics because it's just, to me, it's like a reality TV show. And I've always been, I guess, more into like conspiracies than actual politics. But I have recently, and maybe it's also just people that listen to my show, but I have come across where people are kind of looking back at Abraham Lincoln and saying like maybe he wasn't like the president that everybody thought he was. I have seen a lot of people even say that they think that he was kind of the one who started socialism in the United States, in a sense.
Yeah, well, he was.
What I was going to get, I was going to ask you, like, do you believe that? Like, I know you're saying, like, people are saying Lincoln did this and Lincoln did that. Are you under the belief that he was actually a really good president, or do you think, like, maybe he did some shady things and that's why they refer back to him? I don't know.
Well, to be fair, and as people have reminded me, he was president in a unique circumstance. So we don't really know what he would have done, let's say, if there hadn't been the conflict going on, if you didn't have states trying to secede from the Union. Mm-hmm. I don't know what kind of president he might have been, but I do know that because of that, he used that, and he ironically, he called it insurrection, just as we heard that name now. And if he had simply, my point was that this country was founded on the primary principle of the American Revolution, the War for Independence, was that people everywhere have a right to consent to govern them, to consent to be governed by those they want to be. So the consent of the governed was the guiding principle of our founding. Now, in 1860, obviously, the original seven southern states that wanted to secede from the Union no longer consented. They didn't want to be a part of it. It doesn't matter if they had slaves or any of that stuff. I mean, it's regardless of the circumstances. Mm-hmm. They didn't want to be governed anymore. They wanted to leave. And the Union, at that time, I don't think anybody thought you had to stay. This was an involuntary union because, again, what did the colonies, the American colonies, seceded from British rule? That was a secession. Mm-hmm. That's what we were born. So people pointed that out at the time. But again, Lincoln was inflexible on this issue. If he had simply, it was an impractical thing to do. If he had simply let the original 7 states secede, they probably would have come back with their tail between their legs, a year or less, because they couldn't. It would have been impractical to have like another country inside the border. I mean, it would have been very hard for them to do. But he didn't do that. Instead, he planted his foot down, and then he started flexing his muscle and bringing troops in, and that's why you had the other 6 states that came with him that didn't want to secede originally. And so you had 13 states, and so it became a much more viable battle between the two. So if Lincoln and Lincoln was inflexible the entire time, he wouldn't negotiate with them. No, you must stay in the Union. That's it. And so I don't know what he would have done if that hadn't happened, because everything is built around how he responded to that. He suspended the writ of habeas corpus, which has never been done before or since. And again, all these precedents he set, he shut down over 250 newspapers. And we see that happening now with the censorship and everything. So Lincoln, he was up until the time he was the 16th president. To take out the exception of Polk, President Polk, who started the war with Mexico, which I think was their first step really in the wrong direction, which Lincoln ironically opposed, rightfully. But by the other 14 presidents, there's no evidence, regardless of if I disagreed with them, I disagree with a lot of them, they didn't overstep their constitutional boundaries. They didn't take on powers that they weren't supposed to have. Lincoln was the first one who really thought, as even a lot of the court historians said, there's no evidence that he thought there was any limit to his powers. He just, I'm the commander in chief. There's an insurrection going on, so we're gonna. so this, and he was the first imperial president. Of course, all the highly rated presidents by the court historians are imperial presidents, and they're all the worst presidents in my mind. Lincoln, Woodrow Wilson, FDR. People like that took on great powers, were war presidents, pushed war. Obama will probably eventually be, considered great, I'm guessing.
He already is.
Yeah, by the court historian. So that's the. I mean, Lincoln. I once worshipped him too, like everybody else, and I have in the book. I have a long section after it, just to show that I'm fair. I think he was killed by an inside job. I think he was killed by. So I talk a lot about his assassination in there, and I don't know if that's because maybe he really was going to be. With no malice, with malice towards none and charity towards all, as he said in his second. Maybe he really was going to treat the South differently, and you wouldn't have had Reconstruction, which means you probably would have never had the KKK or Jim Crow or any of that stuff. That was all born out of that. So I don't know. We'll never know. But Lincoln.
Well, I do think this is just going from my, and I have no idea with the KKK why, exactly why, but just from looking at their regalia. it's quite obvious to me that they're an occult society. So, like, who even knows, like, the reason behind that? I really hate to say, and not to get into that whole rabbit hole, but it's just because when you mention the KKK, it is a topic I do want to cover, because I do think it's an occult society. Yeah. Real quick, just going back to a little bit of what you had said about Lincoln, and it was something I was going to mention, and somebody even mentioned it in the chat. Wasn't there states that wanted to leave and had nothing to do with slavery? Like, they didn't even really agree with him then, and they didn't have slaves, right?
Well, that's so that, not that they didn't have slaves, but they, the evidence is over, and I show in my book. I have, all the, I have quotes from all the Southern leaders saying that this is not a slavery. Now they'll.
Oh, there we go. I guess we lost him. Well, he did warn me prior that lately he has been having, internet difficulties with connecting to shows. So I guess it just happened right there. We just lost him. Well, I am going to message him back and tell him to come back. And hopefully, we get this back and going. Just hold on 1 second. I will message him. Sorry about that, people. The one problem about going live. Oh, he's back. Damn, that was quick. You're
there
good.
You go.
You're good.
I guess what I tell you what happened. So I guess maybe I thought there were no problems at all. And then I don't know.
Well, you did start glitching like a minute or two beforehand. I was like, uh-oh, here we go.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah. So I was like, and then I was like, I guess we're all right. And then you dropped out. So.
I don't know what it is.
It's okay.
But it really doesn't usually happen unless it's my show. So I don't know. I guess it doesn't bode well for my show later today. I don't know what I can do. I've had the cable people out here 3 different times now, 3 different texts, and they keep saying they're fixing it. It just, I still have this problem with live streaming. I've got the Gigablast plan. I've got the top plan. I don't know what else I can do. But anyway, I apologize to people. Okay. But if you watch my show, unfortunately, this happens. It happened one time with John McAfee. I had John McAfee on, before he was killed later. I had him on a couple times. And one of the times we had these kind of issues, it was really embarrassing. But,
Oh, it happens. It's out of your control. You can't do anything about it,
Yeah.
So there was something, and I don't know. I actually haven't heard you mention anything about them. So I don't know if it's even a topic that you get into. I'm just thinking of like old bullshit stories from the past and trying to think of like stuff from like the 1800s. Did you, I think, just my opinion, even stuff with the Mormons, like with the whole Joseph Smith being killed and that whole thing. Do you even think that was like a cover up or there was like bullshit stories going on with that? I don't know if you know anything about that stuff.
Well, I just know.
Because like for me, I almost wonder, is he like the original Epstein that supposedly got killed in jail? Back then there was no proof. What are you going to do? Oh, this guy's got 2 wooden teeth like Joseph Smith. That must be him. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Well, it was, the idea that the story goes that he went out into the woods or something and he found a tablet or something was given. So,
but his death in jail, I just felt was just very suspicious. And even
I hear all I can say about Mormons is the Mormons I've known, and I've known some, have all been really nice personally, but you kind of have to stay away from them trying to recruit you, I guess. But so I don't know beyond that. South Park did a really good episode on the Mormons a while back, I think, where they tried to show that their beliefs pretty much seem bizarre to most of us, but personally they seem to be really nice. If you ever have them come to your door, they'll knock at the door, but they'll just, it's almost like Stepford wives or something. They have smiles on their faces. You can't get off. But it's hard to get mad at them because they seem really kind.
I wasn't like targeting that. I'm just talking about like how the.
No, I know. I bet you, but I think you can look at that certainly later on, the Scientologists. If you look at some of the things they believe as well. So it's I don't know, I believe, and again, people allowing to, believe whatever they want. That's as a civil libertarian. But course, I agree. The Mormons, I think they still have legalized bigamy out there in Utah. Don't they still allow them to have multiple wives? I think they do.
That's the funny thing. They will admit, even the cops out there will admit that it is illegal. They just don't, for some reason, just let the Mormons do it. I don't know.
I don't know where they find the women for that. Where do you find the women that will be willing to be involved in that? I don't know.
You're right, for real. Yeah, and the reason I was even bringing that up is because I do think, if I do remember correctly, when we covered a little bit of like Skinwalker Ranch, which somehow went back to Mormons because of Utah. But besides that, when we started getting into the history of them on the Occult Rejects, I do know, I think Lincoln was the president at the time, and he like sent like 6,000 troops down to Utah because they were like, yo, everybody wants you guys like out of here. And like 6,000 troops showed up, and there was like 2,500 or 3,000 armed militia Mormons, and the troops literally turned around and went back home. Yeah. You know, and I was like, damn. So like the Mormons just told the federal government, go screw yourself. That's serious, actually. Yeah, but I had wondered like how truthful that is, and I just wondered if that was anything that you ever like.
No, I don't. I don't really go into it in the book, but I probably should look into it now that you mention it. I need, because nobody else really was able to turn back Lincoln's troops, so that is interesting.
I could be wrong. It could not have been him, but I do think at the time, I do think it was him that sent all the troops there, or whoever. I could be wrong, but yeah. When it comes to, you had mentioned JFK. I do know, like, I did have William Ramsey on not too long ago for that. Yes, I don't want to bore too many of my listeners with that again, but I am interested to hear, like, if you don't mind going into, like, what is your take on JFK? Do you think that whole thing was meant to, I guess, maybe start ushering in stuff? And the reason why I'm saying this, I guess the preface from why I'm interested in this is because I do think, I mean, you get Kennedy. He was a Democrat. Within 5 years of his death, I mean, we had Woodstock and the whole hippie thing going. I had often wondered, was that just a way for people to sympathize and pander to the Democrats? Or is that kind of like a pushing? I'll put it this way. When you have somebody saying, don't worry about what the government should do for you, what you should do for the government, you're already making me sound like a social justice warrior or a slave to the government, in my opinion. So I have often wondered, he did say some nice things, but in my opinion, do people realize what he was really saying? That's just me. I think he was actually already pushing social justice thinking and being slaves, and people loved it.
Well, Kennedy...
and then we feel bad when he dies.
Yeah, well, I mean, Kennedy, again, if you look at his record... people can extract different things that he was saying. He was certainly his inaugural address, that's his most famous quote, "Ask not what your country could do for you, what you could do for your country." That is taken from his inaugural address. Was a Cold Warrior. I think it was very Cold Warrior. And
it's just what it is. When I hear that, I'm like, yo, that reminds me of a perfect line for COVID right now. 2 years ago, they should have been using his line. That would have worked perfect.
But he really evolved as a presidency. After the Bay of Pigs, he was hit with the Bay of Pigs as soon as he got into office. And that he had nothing to do with that. It was planned during the Eisenhower administration under Nixon, or Vice President Nixon. It was a CIA operation all the way. And he was left holding the bag because he never intended to become this full conflict. And they misled him into thinking that, we could easily go in and get this done. And when they didn't, he refused to supply air support because he didn't want there to be like a full-fledged war. So he took responsibility for it. And, said that behind the scenes, he was fuming. And he would never be the same president after that. He fired Allen Dulles, the director of the CIA. He fired Richard Bissell. And he fired Charles Cabell. These are the top three officials in the CIA. I mean, nothing ever happened like that before.
Do you know where, just real quick, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Do you know where those three men ended up going after the CIA? Well, did they end up like switching just to another job, or they just got fired and gone? You know what I'm saying?
Well, no. Well, they ended in terms of, I don't know what Bissell, and I know Charles Cabell, his brother, Earl Cabell, just happened to be the mayor of Dallas at the time of the assassination. And Earl Cabell some of the later documents in recent years, one of the few ones that were really interesting, showed that what many of us had long suspected, that the mayor of Dallas, Earl Cabell, brother of this guy that JFK fired, had been a CIA asset all along. So we knew that. But Allen Dulles most famously became a member of the Warren Commission, and the most active member of the Warren Commission investigating Kennedy's death. Dulles obviously hated JFK. And most people don't realize, excuse me, I'll have it in Hidden History 3 coming up.
Nice.
JFK's father, Joseph P. Kennedy Sr., was on a commission, and Bobby Kennedy Jr., in his book, is the first one that exposed this. He was on a commission looking into the CIA in the 1950s. And Joseph Kennedy Sr., the old man, was the first one to say, hey, the CIA's got to be reined in. They're already out of line in the 50s. This was before JFK. So Allen Dulles hated the Kennedys before that, and then the son fires him after this. So he was incensed. The entire establishment lined up against JFK after he did that. And then as he went along, you can see the progression of his administration. I think it culminated in, of course, the Cuban Missile Crisis. Again, he was the only one that didn't. Him and his brother Bobby were the only ones that didn't want to go to nuclear war with Cuba and Russia. They're the only ones. Everybody else, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, everything. And then after that, Operation Northwoods, which was secret, was the only way we learned about Operation Northwoods was during the 1990s Assassination Record and Review Board releases. Just happened to slip through there, probably purposely, because they usually want you to know these things. And but it told them, and so people talk about Sandy Hook and Boston bombing, and even Damar Hamlin recently. All these things where people get on the rabbit holes of these. Well, they were suggesting this back in 1962. The Joint of Staff, the CIA, all of these people were. They wanted to. Operation Northwoods was a plan to have fake plane crashes, fake real ones too. But it's unclear how many people are going to actually die. But this is a whole plan to have fake things happening using crisis actors to try to and blame everything on Cuba. This is 1962. So, and JFK, again, alone, all the Joint Chiefs of Staff, his rest of his administration, they were all for it. He said, this is insane. And he didn't do it. And then he signed his death warrant, I think, for good with the American University speech in June of 1963. Which, if you look at that and compare it to his inaugural address, it's the antithesis, exactly the opposite. He basically said, he basically said our enemies at the time, the Russians, were human. He said they're human beings. They breathe the same air we do. They care about their children's future. No president had ever said anything like that about our enemies. They're always demonized. And JFK said, we want peace for all time. You say we don't want a Pax Americana imposed on the world by American weapons of war. I mean, no president ever talked about that. And then National Security Action Memorandum 263, shortly before his death, which began the process of pulling out of Vietnam. First 1,000 troops, end 1963, all troops out by 1965. So, and then all you need to know about how the conspiracy worked is the day of the assassination. You want a conspirator? Here's a conspirator for you, McGeorge Bundy, his national security advisor. McGeorge Bundy drafted National Security Action Memorandum 273 on the day of JFK's assassination. And it completely flip-flopped his very recent National Security Action Memorandum 263 and basically paved the way for escalating in Vietnam. Now, Bundy had to know that JFK would never have signed that and would have probably fired him for writing it. So you don't write that unless you're sure he's not going to be around to sign it. So to me, I think that's an obvious example of what happened. So I think, JFK evolved. He was a cold warrior at times when it suited him politically. But if you look at his record, he was talking seriously behind the scenes of abolishing the CIA. Now imagine anybody doing that today. Trump. I would. Talked about abolishing the FBI after they raided, but that was only because they raided his estate. He didn't care if they raided anybody else. And you saw how the establishment, with the liberal establishment, now was up in arms over that. So I think JFK was an enemy to a lot of powerful people. And I think probably, you can only speculate, but I think Oliver Stone got it essentially right in JFK's film. I think there was a consortium of forces, the Pentagon and CIA, maybe even Israel, behind the scenes, he was involved in big dispute with the president of Israel about their nuclear weapons program. That was covered up for decades. So lots and lots of people wanted JFK gone. And so I think that there was, and it was a huge event, and it did, I think, pave the way for the 1960s because even though a lot of people didn't talk about it, no one ever really believed. The majority of the American public never bought the fairy tale that Oswald did it. So I think the cynicism that was born, because if you look at the graph of America, on November 22nd, 1963, you could argue that we were at the apex. We were at our absolute peak as a country and a culture. We were economically strong. We were the world respected us. Most of the world, loved the idea of Americans, the Peace Corps and things like that. That JFK had started these idealistic things, had really inspired young people. culture, everything, standard of living. And from that moment on, I think you can look, if it was a graph, it's been straight down ever since then. I think you can argue that was a peak. There were a lot of elements to it that, theatrical elements, how his head was blown off in public. I mean, there's lots of things you can go.
Oh, that's even traumatizing, I think, just constantly showing on TV. At least back then, that could be trauma just in itself.
Sure, it was unprecedented. Nobody had said that. But of course, and there's so many things. I mean, we could talk about the JFK assassination forever. I mean, you can go into, but I mean, I question everything about it. I question why we have only the home movie for Abraham Zapruder. There are a couple other home movies that were taken too, but they're not the Knicks and much more. But there's the missing Babushka lady film. If you see the woman with the Russian scarf, who's never been conclusively identified, one of the closest witnesses to the assassination, she undoubtedly had the best film because she's right next to the other side, and she would have got the grassy knoll, maybe the book depository in the background as well. She's never been found. There's a woman claiming to be her. It's debatable. Her film has never been found. She claims she gave it to the FBI. So, but what's important is that there were no professional footage. If you watch the JFK's trip to Texas, they've had shows. Every bit of it was professionally documented. He tours the Houston Space Center. They have like hours, of him walking through and asking questions, and everything's documented. And he arrives at the airport. All that's documented. Him shaking hands with all the people and all that stuff. And he gets in the limousine. And then you have the Secret Service agent. In Hidden History, I was the first one to contact the family of who I believe that agent was. His name was Henry Ripka. Now, some people dispute that and say it was somebody else. I think it was Ripka. But you can see, if you've seen that, if you haven't, you should look at it. You can see the limousine starting to walk away, and the Secret Service agent goes like this. Like he throws his hands up. He can't believe he's pulled off the motorcade. I don't think he was in on it. He said, what? Fuck, what's up? You can see he didn't know what was going on. He's being pulled off. He was supposed to jog along besides the limousine, as they did invariably. There was nobody jogging alongside the limousine. The Secret Service made it possible, but that was the last professional footage. As soon as the motorcade begins in Dallas, then you have home videos only. The press truck, usually on most of these motorcades, and research has shown this, there was a press car in front of the limousine, and so the camera's directly on JFK's. He's waving. He had professional footage. This case only, the only time during his presidency, they put all the press on a bus like 6-7 cars back in the motorcade. So that's why you see there's only professional footage. If you watch specials on the JFK assassination, invariably they'll show you this guy. The guy jumps out of the bus and you can see his camera shaking and that's the first footage of it. Other than that, we have the home videos. So we've had to rely on things that we shouldn't have to rely on. We shouldn't have to rely on home videos. We should have professional footages, but so that's suspect right there.
That's a really good point, yeah.
Yeah. So, I question all of it, but I mean, it's a huge conspiracy. And it's a very important, and that's why. So, if you look what happened, Tucker Carlson, who I don't know what to think of, because Tucker Carlson on the surface is a real establishment guy, but he is getting bolder and bolder. He just had a show the other day where he went into depth about Epstein. Now obviously he didn't kill him, just really stuff that that other journalists don't do, but. He shocked the world last month where he came right out on television and said the CIA killed Kennedy. I mean, I've studied this for decades, man. And Bobby Kennedy Jr. had the same reaction that I did. He said, this is the most amazing reporting on the JFK assassination he'd ever seen. And he's brought it up a couple times again. He was talking about the CIA getting rid of Nixon the other day. So I don't know what's going on there, if this is all part of control opposition. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to think, but I mean, it's and of course, in the JFK assassination research community, such as it is, and that I'm a part of, and I have lots of issues with, because those people are, mostly counterproductive, and they just argue with each other. But they don't know what to do because they all hate Tucker Carlson so much, they can't stand the fact that he said what they've been saying for a long time, and so they don't know what to do. So they're almost to the point where they're just going to start saying Oswald did it. I think. That's how much they hate the other side. So I don't know. It's crazy. But when you study these things, I just report what I see, and I try not to speculate too much. But it's unfortunately a lot of people do speculate. But I don't, but it's clearly, you're talking about almost 60 years. It'll be 60 years this year of the JFK assassination. You, at this point, still trying to tell the truth about it is apparently too much for the American media to handle, and they won't outside of Tucker Carlson.
I have noticed recently, and not that I watch it too much, but my wife likes Tucker Carlson sometimes. So I'll have it on the TV. But I have noticed with him, I don't know so much about everybody else on Fox, but and I hate to use this term, it's just probably the only thing that makes sense. It almost seems like they're getting a little bit more conspiratorial, I guess. Yes. Or what people would consider conspiracies. I have noticed, I've been like, wow, they actually just said that, but are they just trying to appeal to conspiracy theorists now? I don't know, but it is very weird. I have heard them say some weird shit. Yeah,
his show, and his producer has one of my books, has had one of my books for a while. So I'm still holding out hope. And Naomi Wolf, who wrote the foreword to one of my books, has been on his show many times. So he has people connected to me that he has on the show. So I'm still hoping. And I'm just finishing up. That'll be my next book coming out. It's going to be a book about the pandemic, COVID. Masking the Truth is the title of it, and that'll be out real soon. And I'm going to send that to them. And I'm hoping, because he's done a lot of good work on that too. He has Alex Berenson, who reports a lot of the same things that I do on this. So I'm hoping, if you can get their attention, because I want to, then people will probably say I sold out if I ever get on there. But I won't sell out, but I take whatever platform I have. So that'll be, something I'm trying to do. But anyhow, that book will be coming out if people are interested in it very soon. I'll be promoting it.
Very nice. Good for you. Good for you. There was something you had. Oh, you were even talking about, I guess the film footage before.
Yeah.
What was that? I can't remember. Was it? Oh God, I forgot his name. The guy who did Behold the Pale Horse, Bill Cooper.
Yes.
Was he the one that was kind of known for having, I think, didn't he have Chinese footage or something like that, or someone? He had different footage where he was showing possibly the driver turning around and shooting him.
Well, I don't know.
I wanted to ask you what you thought about that. I mean,
well, that's, and Bill Cooper. I love. He did a lot of great work, and I think he repudiated that driver. There are people that believe that, but the problem with that is that Bill Greer, I think, was a conspirator, the driver, because William Greer. I mean, he made it happen. The shots were fired, and he not only didn't accelerate out of there, he pretty much stopped the limousine.
Well, I was going to say, if people are involved, you're probably going to want the driver to be involved.
Absolutely. He absolutely was. And he turned around and watched Kennedy's head get blown off. So there's no question he was a conspirator. But I just, I think the idea, the little flash that supposedly you see, I find it hard to believe that a conspiracy at this level, because this had to be really, top level people planning all this. You get the Secret Service to stand down. Why would you have an old Secret Service, right? Why would you have the driver? I mean, first of all, he has to shoot through the Connollys, so they might get in the way to begin with, because he's shooting from the front seat and the back seat. There's a seat in the middle, a bumper seat. So he would have to shoot through two people to do it.
Well, if that gun didn't have a silencer, your ear's going to probably be fucking ringing too.
Right. I mean,
or you might even be disassociated for a few seconds.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there is the argument, I guess, that it would be really hiding in plain sight, that no one possibly would even think that was possible, and they had distractions. But I just, again, I think it's actually, pretty silly. I don't know why Bill Cooper believed it. Bill Cooper was, a great guy, and he ended up giving his life. He went out the way a conspiracy person's supposed to. A bunch of law enforcement people, killed him on his property. And so, I mean, it's hard to go out more fashionably than that if you're a conspiracy
I guess
guy,
if I'm doing a good job, that will happen to me, right?
Right. Well, yeah, apparently so. Yeah. Well, bad people have told me that before. It's like, well, basically, you don't have any credibility unless they kill you. I said, well, I hope that's not the case, but 'cause I don't.
That's the thing
I don't know.
That's the thing that fears me, though, because it's it fears me also. It's you can just fake a death, and now people think whatever you were doing at the time was right or real. Right. I mean, you know what I'm getting. I mean, when you want to start getting into is Epstein really dead, or did he, you know what I'm saying?
Right. You
never know.
Yeah, and there's lots of. I mean, I question everything. That's why I don't dismiss. I've had flat earthers on my show. I know there's a computer simulation theory out there. I mean, I believe that we're being lied to about everything. So I don't dismiss anybody wanting to believe in the hollow earth or whatever, because the people that are in charge don't tell the truth about anything. That's why if you see this, I don't know if you're a football guy or not, but if you watch this DeMar Hamlin thing, it may seem ridiculous, but something, I mean, it's all over the internet. I mean, when they brought him out at the last game, I mean, I don't know this is the kind of stuff that we see all the time that drives you down the rabbit hole. I mean, they made such a big production of DeMar Strong and all this stuff. Why would he was wrapped in this hoodie and glasses on, so you couldn't see who it was. It could have been you or me. Nobody knew.
Oh, yeah, and then he was like, and then whoever it was, they're showing through like the blades. He's throwing up the signs
with his
and all
hands.
this.
It's like, why wouldn't he be completely exposed? Why wouldn't he be interviewed? And why wouldn't he be waving and smiling triumphantly to the fans so everybody could see him? No, I mean,
if you notice, if you watch even that whole video, there's never once a fully clear shot of his face.
No, and for people that play into the beliefs, you mentioned the occult thing, all the players are kneeling around blocking him in violation of medical protocol. By the way, usually they say get back so we can. They want somebody right there in the face. All the players were kneeling except for one, and his number was 33. So
you saw that too.
Yes, yeah. So I mean, it's
and then wasn't it like this guy? His number is 3, and didn't he go shake hands and hug another dude that had 3?
Yes.
So then it was like 33 again.
Yes, the 33 again, and I question that took place on a Monday night. I think
Magic. The moon. I
don't know for sure. By Thursday, I think by the Thursday night game, they had already gotten some of those shirts out. I don't know, but I know by Saturday,
it was on a Thursday that finally happened, because I was going to bring that up. I was going to say, isn't it wild how he already has shirts out 3 days or 4 days after this happened?
Marketing campaign. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how long that kind of stuff takes, and one of the shirts said, "Did we win?" Now, that was actually 1 or 2 days later. That was Tuesday or Wednesday, because that's when he first talked supposedly and said, "Did we win?" So, how did, and they were definitely out by Saturday.
He must have mumbled it while he was in a coma.
Yeah, I mean, it's, it's fine. Okay, it's a feel-good story, whatever, but I question the logistics of getting that out there that fast and getting them on. I mean, how did the people order those shirts that quickly, and they were wearing them in the stadium?
Well, I find it. See, I didn't know, or I didn't pay attention to the exact days. But I mean, all right, Monday is associated with the moon, but when you get into the Kabbalah, the moon is very much associated with magic, and Thursday would go along with Jupiter, which is associated with abundance, and that would go along with money and business. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like, yo, can you make this up any more better? Like, the guy gets hurt on a Monday, and the shirts are out to sell by Thursday.
Well, that was one thing, but now with his appearance, I mean, it was bad enough. There are a lot of people question when he left the hospital. That should have been a real photo op, right? I mean, why weren't
look at what they do that for people who are unknown on the local news. I can see some mother that got hurt and they're finally leaving the hospital.
Yeah, no videos, no.
Oh yeah, they're all up in their face, right? Asking them how they feel. And this guy,
DeMar, how are you? I mean, nothing like that. No, I mean, typically they probably would have had one of the reporters go up to the skybox where he was at and interview him. Instead, he's still wearing the hoodie and everything, concealing his face in the skybox. It was that cold. He had to have the hoodie on, concealing his face. The camera.
He was worried about COVID in a closed room too.
Yeah. I mean. It raised a lot of questions. So you saw it, you saw people on Twitter questioning it, and then he supposedly answered it by appearing in front of his picture in a football uniform, saying "clone" or something. But he's still wearing the stuff. He's wearing the outfit that conceals him. So I mean, they could have had anybody there. We don't. And as I mentioned again, I go there. I said nobody knew who the hell DeMar Hamlin was before that time, and does anybody know what he looks like really? So they could trot anybody out there and say it was him. Would we know? Beside his family?
Yeah, that's a really good point, tell you the truth. I mean, did anybody really know who he was prior to not know that's him now?
I mean, it's one thing you don't have Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers maybe. It's going to be harder to sell that, but somebody like this, nobody knows what he looked like. I mean, there's, really? So, I don't know.
They probably could have shown a white dude and said it was him, and people
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, because he was completely covered. You couldn't tell anything. He looked orange because he had the orange jumpsuit on. But that's what I'm saying about how, because of the dishonesty of the media and the dishonesty, the dishonest narrative, the corruption, people out there, if we're awake, you're going to question everything. And so when you see those things, and that's why YouTube got rid of all those great videos about Sandy Hook and the Boston bombing and all these things, because people were seeing these kind of anomalies right away and saying, wait, what does this mean? What is, why is it, so they don't allow that anymore. But this one, because there's footage from the NFL and everything, we can analyze it and BitChute and so forth. And I write on Substack, and there's a guy in Substack that did a lot of good work about it and that exposed all this. But so, that's the kind of thing. I mean, I don't think it's the most important issue, but it shows again how they can. And of course, the theory here would be that did the NFL, was this done because he, as most of us thought, dropped dead like all the thousands of soccer players in Europe have done? We thought, oh, well, finally it happened to an NFL guy, right? Everybody assumed that. So did the NFL say, we can't have this? So they made up this story? I don't know. But I know the story made no sense.
It's very interesting. Yeah, there's even just from some of the things you said that I haven't thought of. I mean, there's so many rabbit holes to ideas.
No, and there's a guy yesterday, now he's not in the NFL now. It didn't happen on the field. 25 years old, a former linebacker. He was only, again, nobody heard of him. He died suddenly. They don't even give, they don't even give reasons anymore for this stuff. It's just
no, dying suddenly is just like a normal thing now, I guess.
Yeah, 25 years old. I don't remember, it being 25 and thinking I could just die any time.
Must have been the eggs. Must have been the eggs they had.
Yeah, it must be. So you can bet these guys are all fully back. So I think that was that. I think that, but I don't know. Again, I'm speculating there. But all I know is that if the fact that to me, that made it about as ridiculous as any of these things that people have talked about, Sandy Hook or Boston Bob, anything else, to have him show up like that, completely covered, and to really barely pay much attention to him when they had been paying so much attention to him before. Now, when you think now, okay, if this is a feel-good story, now the feel-good part, right? Here he is, man. He's fine. He's in one piece. He's at the game cheering his team on. No, he's covered completely, and he's giving Illuminati hand signals. Well, it's like, what do you expect people to think, And
that doesn't help with the 33 prior, really.
No, exactly.
You're not making this case look any better for you.
Exactly. And that's why people I don't theorize at all. People say, I'm not a conspiracy. As Gore Vidal said, one of the last great writers, Gore Vidal said, he's a conspiracy analyst. I'm a conspiracy analyst.
I like that.
I'm not theorizing. I'm showing you what I'm seeing. The only guy standing up when they were all huddled around him was number 33. That's not a theory. Okay, maybe it's just a wild coincidence, but we see that number way too often.
I think especially recently, it's been even worse. 17 and 33, I've seen in news lines constantly.
Yeah, and then you have it did take a long time to get him off the field. They were there forever, and then they one of my friends that was writing about this, he pointed out the ambulance didn't have any lights, and it didn't look like he had any lights on inside. How are they treating him? And then
that was? That was Ocean's 11 right there. You ever see that movie when they show up as the SWAT team, but yet they're already,
Yeah, and then supposedly one of the reasons they waited so long was they were waiting for his mother. Really? So
he might die, but we got to wait.
Mother's got to be there before they treat. I mean, and then they have it's almost like the OJ, chasing the Bronco, very slow drive to the hospital. It just. None of it made any sense. And then what happened afterwards, a couple days later, his first words were, Ronald Reagan, Gipper type of, did we win? I mean, really? Okay. Not what happened to me? Am I okay? Nothing like that. And then the marketing campaign that shows up suddenly, DeMar Strong, number 3s are everywhere. And did we win? And all these T-shirts everywhere, and then his the charity he ran does. I don't know how many millions they raised. It was only had like a couple thousand before that. So I don't know, man. It's just I question these things, and but then the icing on the cake is when he shows up at the stadium looking like that. I'm sorry if you don't want people to speculate, then stop doing crazy shit like that. I mean, really, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, there's certain points of it where I mean, like you said, there's just so many things you can even think about with this. I wondered, is this just like a money grab? Sell the shirts. I don't know. It was just, the whole thing makes no sense at all to me.
No.
I'm probably going to, if you don't mind, I think I'm going to wrap it up there. This is about 50 minutes. I normally do about an hour, only because like, I do have stuff to have to take care of. I was just trying to get you on and get a show in today. I would love to have you back on again, too, and it maybe come a little bit more equipped and more specific topics to have you cover. I just wanted you to kind of just brush over like what stuff about your books and stuff. But I would love to have you back on again in the future.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and probably within a few weeks, if you don't mind, I'll bring you back on. If you want, again, like you said in the beginning, you did mention all the links and stuff that people can find you at. If you want, would you like to go over that again, just in case people jumped in later on, didn't catch the live at the beginning?
If people want to hear about, I have written a couple things about Damar Hamlin. Again, I don't really intend to do that, but it's just, I can't help it. It grabs my attention. But Substack, I write regularly at. So, and that is really because of the censorship on social media. I'm shadow banned on Twitter. I'm shadow banned on Facebook. I don't even use Instagram. What's the point? And but
do you
Substack,
think you can shadow ban though, also possibly because you didn't pay the $8? Do you think that's possible too? Because I do feel like with Twitter, unless you pay the $8 now, you really don't get much
Well, I don't think I'm at the point where I could have a blue check for me. I don't know, but maybe that would make a difference. But all I know.
Oh, well, I'm not saying to go pay for it. I'm just wondering, because Elon does say if you don't have that mark, you will kind of be shadow banned.
He says that's one of the weird things he says. But Substack is great. It's a free speech platform. At least so far, it's untouched. I can write about anything I want there, and my presence is growing there. I'm getting a lot of more subscribers. I'm getting a lot of paid subscribers now, so it's nice. I offer everything for free, but if people want to help me out, that's fine. A lot of people have, so they can find a couple things I've written about Damar Hamlin there. I write about it. I write regularly there, so it's donaldjeffries.substack.com, and it's called I Protest, which is the same as my show, which will be on later today. So every Friday, live streams over rockfin.com and my social media channel, my YouTube channel, which lets me live stream as long as I delete the show right afterwards. Because if I keep it up, they'll ban me. They'll suspend me or whatever. So I have to delete. But it's nice for live stream because you get a lot of comments and everything. But so that's 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern. I Protest, and
very nice.
Yeah, and you can find me everywhere. donaldjeffries.media is my website. But if you search for me, you'll probably find out more than you want to know.
All right, very good. Thank you so much. And I know you said before it isn't something that you really wanted to get into, but maybe when you come back, we can even touch on the Hamlin thing a little bit more.
Sure.
If it's worth talking about more, because I do find that very interesting. Thank you very much for coming on. It was during the day. It was somewhat in the morning. I appreciate making yourself available. Thank you, everybody who jumped in on the chat. We got Jonah, we got Helen, we got Boondocking Billy. All of you that jumped in on the chat, thank you very much. That's why I go live. That's what's up. Donald, again, thank you very much for coming on, and I will definitely have to get you back on again and be a little bit more prepared, too. I'll be totally honest. I was politics, I'm into, conspiracy stuff, but when it comes to specific politics, I'm not that good. So I'll have to brush up a little bit and have you on for real specific topics and deep stuff.
Anytime. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you. So, that is the end of another NY Patriot show, a Friday Live, something I like to try to do when I can. Everybody have a great day, and until the next one, later.